and having the stutterers read it. And what he noticed was that when they read it, they didn't stutter. Because you could only get about 5 or 6 words per line. So they would read and stop. And they usually ended the line at these juncturing points, where there was a comma or the beginning of a phrase. And so that's how we hit on that fact, that it was these juncturing points that allowed you to have this natural rhythm in your speech. And that didn't sound, not only didn't sound out of factual, that what it did was it actually lended a greater aura of emotion and feeling and conviction about what it is that you were saying. And so I decided against the gadget. Decided against the gadget for those reasons, that you didn't need it. Same thing was really true on the toilet training. I had a gadget in the potty, and then I decided that was actually counterproductive, because when we did that, the people would just leave the child there and they'd tie a string around, and all the potties came with these restraining belts, and they'd wait for the alarm to go off. And I wanted them to stay there and reinforce the child for sitting quietly, and you could hear when the urine came, and so you could go and reinforce them. So, and the same thing was actually true with the urinal in the enuresis, and that is that, like I said, I tried a method that didn't use the, because I found so many mothers, they did the idea of putting an electrical gadget in the bed with their child was the worst thing in the thing they could imagine. You could reassure them it's only a battery, that it won't shock you. No, they wanted nothing to do with it. And so this was a wonderful alternative. Well, let's see, that was the posture, what was and the stuttering.
Cigarette case.
And the cigarette. Yeah, the cigarette case, that was a technological problem. What I wanted was longer and longer durations. And I tried that out, and I don't know whether you remember the article, but I got it up to 1 hour, I think it was. And I needed a timing device. This was way back before transistors and integrated circuits were available. And so I tried to find a timer that I could use to control the time on this. And the only thing I could find is this parking meter timer. I don't know whether you remember it. There's a little rotary thing, you turned it, and it had a 2-hour duration maximum. And so I had my own shop, and so I had my engineers go and build the gadget that used that timer. The first hour of it, they had to use as slippage. They couldn't do it. And so I couldn't get it past an hour. And that's the only reason I didn't go past that. I saw some of these gadgets marketed by other people, and out of curiosity I bought it and tried the thing out. And they're just so horrible in terms of behavioral part. What happened, the way the basic principle worked is you had a case that you put your pack of cigarettes in, and then each time that you opened up the case to obtain a cigarette, it advanced the time interval, but by infinitesimal amounts. Like 1 second. Very, very slight. So there's no temptation to just throw the whole thing away. It wasn't aversive. And for the first 2 weeks, you know, 1 second a day, 2 seconds a day, it was only up to about a few seconds. And so you became accustomed to using this. And the way I had arranged it was that when it timed out, what you did was just had a click, a momentary click. And when it timed out, it pushed up this little needle on the top, a little pin, I should say needle, so that if you touch the gadget, you feel that projecting. In other words, it was tactual as well as brief auditory, non-disruptive. The gadget that I bought, you probably had a Beethoven symphony when it timed out. So you have this thing, you time it out. Imagine you're talking to people, it was almost like a cellular phone going off. Da, 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 da. And that didn't go anywhere. But I think the basic idea was very good, and if I had the means of it, the engineering means of implementing that. But I know I gave it to some other, I tried all kinds of things on that. There's a close relative of mine who was an engineer, and so I asked him if he could go and do it, and he came back and said it was impossible. And I told him, well, I'd already built the thing, so that you had at least an hour. And then I wrote away to some of the companies that would make up prototypes, and I can't believe how much it cost to make up these prototypes. I mean, that was what, 15, 20, 30 years ago. It was something like $5,000, $10,000 just for the first gadget, which I guess we need. But then if you're going to make 1,000 of them, then of course, then the cost per unit would be almost nothing. So I think the basic conception there was fine, and if anybody had the engineering facility to it and enough behavioral sophistication so that they didn't have the completion of the interval be so disruptive that it would interfere with your ongoing social activities, I think it would work. So, yeah, I think the basic idea of the behavioral engineering was fine. I even developed some other gadget with respect to the marital to antabuse. I built a gadget. Do you remember that? I had this gadget, and they already had gadgets available for medication dispensing, and I did publish something on that too, on medication dispensing, right? And people with more engineering equipment and know-how around have developed that. But I did the same thing with the antabuse. But then I found that if antabuse, because it was aversive, they engage in all kinds of reasons for not taking it. So I found it to be far more reliable to not use the gadget, but to go to get the husband and the wife together and to arrange for things between them. And so one of the arrangements that we had was that each of them would take their daily medications together. And at that time, the anti-ovulation pills were they were greatly popular. And so she would take the anti-ovulation pill, and he would take the anti. And so there was that quid pro quo, and so the gadget was fine, but it really needed the motivation behind it. It needed the significant other, the social support behind it, and so there were all different reasons for not doing it. But I think the one on the scoliosis, I think. Yeah, that if I had the relevant population around, because just normal slouching is not something that's of great concern to most people. But for scoliosis, that's a life-threatening condition. And I don't know whatever happened with Neil Miller's project, but I guess suffice to say that other people have followed through on that idea, not that I developed, but it was ironic. He was the founder of biofeedback, and yet I had started using it about 10 years before him. Well,
thanks. We're going to
that question was more revealing of your fund of knowledge. That last article that you published, that you were doing that replication in terms of actual out-preventers, but the fact that punishment had greater effectiveness when you had alternative responses available, and you dug up that article that I had done decades before that, but in a contrived situation, and you were doing it in an average situation. I thought that was great, because it had implications for, but again, unless you get actual data in the real life situation, it really doesn't count. It's just metaphorical analogies, and but that seems to be the case, and then make alternatives. And you can see how in all the different things we talked about, like when you're making requests, and always have alternatives, right? They don't stick to just one course of action. So I really compliment you on your incredible fund of knowledge that you have on that, that you dug up those things that.
Well, it wasn't hard, but yours. It's easier time.
Well, if everybody will hang around for a few minutes, Terry has a couple of announcements, and then I think we've also got a demonstration of our interactive video.